The rain had been falling since before sunset, a cold, steady drizzle that soaked through shoes and patience alike. Daniel locked the back door of the grocery store and slid the key into his pocket, shoulders aching from a double shift that barely paid the bills. The neon sign flickered behind him, buzzing like it was tired too. He adjusted the strap of his worn backpack, feeling the familiar shapes inside, a discounted loaf of bread, a can of soup, and a folded piece of paper his son had insisted he carry, crayons pressed hard into the page, a lopsided drawing of the two of them standing under a smiling sun. The bus stop across the street was nearly empty. Nearly. A girl sat on the bench with her knees tucked close, rain beating on the ends of her hair. Her coat looked thin, not meant for weather like this, and her sneakers were dark with water. She stared at the pavement as if counting drops, calm in a way that didn't match the hour or the cold. Daniel slowed without meaning to. He told himself to keep walking. He had learned, the hard way, how quickly kindness could become a burden he couldn't carry. "Hey," he said anyway, voice gentle. "You waiting on someone?" She looked up. Her eyes were steady, thoughtful, too old for her age. "I missed my ride," she said. No complaint, no panic, just a fact. The streetlight hummed above them. Daniel glanced around, half expecting a parent to appear, a car to pull up. Nothing. The rain whispered on the concrete. He thought of his son, Leo, asleep in their small apartment, trusting that his father would always come home. He remembered nights after the divorce, when he'd stood at stops like this, wishing the world would soften for just a moment. "It's cold," Daniel said. "Do you have somewhere to go?" She hesitated, fingers tightening around the strap of her bag. "Just for tonight," she said quietly. "Anywhere warm." Daniel felt the weight of the decision settle in his chest. He didn't have space. He didn't have money. He barely had time. But he had a door. He had soup. He had a son who learned what love looked like by watching him. He exhaled, a long breath that felt like stepping off a ledge. "I can't promise much," he said. "My place is small. And it's just for one night." Relief softened her face, the kind that comes when fear finally loosens its grip. "Thank you," she said, as if the words mattered enough to be careful with them. They walked together through the rain. Daniel offered his jacket when he noticed her shiver, waving off her protest. The city felt quieter than usual, like it was listening. At the building, he unlocked the door and held it open, water dripping from their sleeves onto the floor. Warm air met them, faintly smelling of old paint and soup waiting to be heated. Inside, Daniel set his bag down and turned on the light. "I'm Daniel," he said. "We'll get you warm. Then you can rest." She nodded, eyes bright. "I'm Emily." He didn't know then that her name carried a fortune, or that men were searching the city for her with worry thick as the rain. He only knew that a child had asked for shelter, and for one night, he chose to answer. Daniel's apartment was nothing more than a small, aging unit on the third floor, the kind where the heater rattled as if it might give up any second and the walls seemed to sigh under the weight of old paint. He flicked on the dim overhead light, the hum filling the silence that stretched between him and Emily as she followed him inside. Leo, his 7-year-old son, stirred from the couch where he had been watching cartoons, blinking at the strangers' wet coats and dripping umbrellas. "Dad?" Leo asked cautiously, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Who's she?" "This is a guest," Daniel said carefully. "She's staying the night. That's all." Leo's small face scrunched in thought, but instead of asking further, he nodded as if this were perfectly normal. The innocence of a child could stretch even the tightest heart, Daniel thought. Leo shuffled over and offered his blanket without hesitation, a faded, star-patterned comforter he had slept under for years. Emily took it gratefully, wrapping herself in the fabric, her trembling hands betraying just how cold she truly was. They ate the soup Daniel had warmed in silence, the kind of silence that holds its breath, waiting to see if the world will break again. Emily spoke softly, carefully measuring her words as if afraid of revealing too much. She asked about Leo's school, about Daniel's shifts at the grocery store, about the little drawings tacked to the fridge. Each answer she received made her relax just a fraction, her shoulders sinking from the tension they had carried all day. When the conversation shifted to family, Emily's eyes flickered toward the window, then down at her hands folded in her lap. "They're busy," she said finally, her voice steady but faintly sorrowful. There was something behind her words that hinted at wealth, distance, and expectations, things Daniel knew little about, but immediately recognized in the look of a child carrying more than she should have. That night, Daniel lay on the couch, listening to the quiet rhythm of breathing from the bedroom. He stared at the ceiling, replaying the events of the evening over and over. Had he made the right choice? Could opening his home to a stranger bring trouble or danger? Yet in the soft glow of the lamp and the faint warmth seeping from the small heater, there was also peace, a rare, fragile comfort that made his chest ache in the best way. In the pre-dawn hours, the sound of car engines broke the calm. Headlights swept across the thin curtains, followed by the soft click of shoes on the concrete outside. A knock came, firm and controlled, carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed. Daniel's heart raced as he opened the door to a man in a perfectly tailored coat, eyes red and wide with worry, followed by quiet, imposing security. "Emily," the man said as she stepped forward, relief flooding his voice. He knelt instinctively, gathering her into his arms. Daniel watched, realizing he had just sheltered someone far more important than he could have imagined. Only then did he learn the truth. Emily was the daughter of a millionaire, one of the most influential men in the city, a man desperate to find his child. Daniel had offered nothing but warmth, a place to rest, a fatherly gesture in a cold world. Yet that small act of kindness, made in the rain and without expectation, had bridged two worlds, and it would never be forgotten. Weeks passed after that night, but Daniel couldn't shake the memory of Emily's quiet gratitude, the way she had smiled under the thin glow of his flickering lamp. Life had a way of demanding attention, of keeping him on the treadmill of work and bills, yet every time he thought of that stormy evening, his chest tightened with a strange warmth, a reminder that even small acts could leave lasting ripples. He assumed that night had been just a fleeting moment of kindness, a story that would fade like the puddles on the street outside his apartment. Then, one crisp afternoon, Daniel received a call that made his heart stop. He was asked to come to an office downtown, somewhere he would have never imagined stepping inside. Hesitant but curious, he took the train through the bustling streets, his mind racing with possibilities and doubts. When he arrived, he was ushered into a spacious room, sunlight streaming through tall windows, and there, standing at the far end, was Emily, her face breaking into an uncontainable grin. She ran to him, throwing her arms around his waist with the sort of joy that only a child who has felt safe after fear could express. Behind her stood her father, a man whose presence commanded attention yet whose eyes were soft, filled with gratitude and relief. Daniel blinked, trying to process it all. "Mr. Daniels," the man said, voice steady but thick with emotion. "You don't know what you did that night. My daughter was safe because of you." Daniel shook his head, unable to find the words. He hadn't saved a millionaire's daughter. He had simply let a child in from the rain, offered warmth and shelter when it was within his power to do so. But as her father spoke of debts cleared, a warmer apartment arranged, and a scholarship fund for Leo, Daniel realized that sometimes the world had a way of returning goodness in ways that went beyond gratitude or money. Emily squeezed his hand. "I've told everyone about you," she whispered. "You reminded me that kindness still exists. That people like you are real." Her words were simple but carried a weight that made Daniel's eyes sting. He glanced at Leo's face, imagining his son growing up with a similar lesson about generosity, courage, and humanity. That winter, back in their new apartment, Daniel tucked Leo into bed, smoothing his hair and gazing at the framed drawing on the wall, a rendition of the three of them holding hands under a bright sun. "Dad," Leo asked sleepily, "do you think helping people always comes back to you?" Daniel smiled, brushing his son's cheek. I think it comes back as who you become, he said softly, feeling the truth in every word. Outside, the city hummed with life, unaware of the quiet miracle that had unfolded within a small apartment. Somewhere not far away, Emily slept safely, knowing the world could be both vast and dangerous, yet still full of hearts willing to open their doors. And Daniel, once struggling and alone, finally understood that sometimes, one night of compassion could change a lifetime.